From the Sky News Centre, this is Paul Murray Live.
Thanks for watching this Monday night. Good to see the rest of the country starting to see what we have known for years. The true character of Anthony Albanese. The man who so often has tried to reinvent himself, but remember, is the bully who wanted to fight Tories. The bloke who screamed across the chamber in opposition to smash up female Liberal ministers when he was in opposition. And as you have all seen in the past 24 hours, being so arrogant that he thinks that he needed to stand in front of women who had stories of their own abuse and tell them how to feel, because he was going to ride the same wave that he did in 2021. Now, the organiser of the rally, I know you've heard it a few times before, but sometimes there's only one lead story in the country. This lady is now being torn apart by Albo backers, including alleged legendary figures of the media. I will save you the stomach-churning garbage coming out of some of them. But this is what she said about the Prime Minister and whether or not the plan was for him to speak and make yesterday be a day about him.
So I said to the audience, do we want him to speak? I wanted the audience to choose, not him. And whilst I was saying that, he said behind me, which many people heard, I'm the Prime Minister, I run this country. And I think that's what really triggered me the most is that the abuse of power there, that the fact that he thought that his position as the Prime Minister, he can do whatever he wants in that moment.
But now the Canberra Columbos are going back to check the tape, exactly what word and where. The woman was crying. She was comforted by her friends. But again, social media trying to back in this Prime Minister, the do no wrong Prime Ministership of Anthony Albanese, are now attacking her. They're claiming that she's a little too addicted to the limelight now. Why? Because she's confronted and told the truth? Because she had the stones to call him out to his face? Again, the reality of what we saw yesterday was a Prime Minister who thought, I'm still the opposition leader. I'm still hurling the metaphorical stones at the previous government and the Prime Minister that everyone hated. Well, no, he's in charge now and has been for a couple of years. But unbelievably, as opposed to just saying sorry this morning on television, as opposed to just saying, look, she did an incredible thing organising that event. If I did anything to detract from it, I apologise. Move on. Oh, no. Instead, he went on every single breakfast show in the country, dressed up like it was the first day of an election campaign, because all the focus groups have said this colour works good with that colour, and swept this woman aside, even getting down to, look, it was an emotional day, and dismissing a woman who has put together this rally on this subject as emotional. Now, we all know what would have happened if it was the previous bloke or a couple of Prime Ministers before that. If it's a Prime Minister, they'd go on for weeks. Instead, Albanese, who should have just said sorry, and probably will say sorry tomorrow, because he knows right now, while he might be hate-watching this program, and I'll get to where he is right now in a moment or two's time, and his staff will be spitting chips. The reality is millions of Australians saw a bloke make it all about himself. A bloke, even, yes, the Prime Minister of the country, be completely indifferent to the people affected by his actions. He could have made his speech 25 seconds and get off the stage, but he didn't. And now they're sending the message out to everyone to pull her apart. This is the perfect metaphor of why women ended up taking to the streets in the first place, about the way that their claims are minimised, about the way that when they speak truth to power, everything gets watered down, past every word, every syllable, because it reflects poorly on the person in charge. Fair dinkum. Again, this was, remember, he just should have said sorry. Instead, he said this.
Sarah Williams has claimed you lied to the nation. What's your response? Oh, look, good on Sarah for organising the rally yesterday.
So she said you're on the stage with her and there was confusion about, you know, who was going to speak. And then you said behind her on the stage words to the effect of, I'm the Prime Minister and I run the country. Did you just say that?
Nat, I'm not going to get into, that sort of debate. I wish Sarah well. This should not be a distraction from what is a very serious issue indeed.
And already the people who want to censor the internet about misinformation are already censoring the video of the Prime Minister pushing past the women who the event was really about and have just edited the moment of him making the organiser cry, who has just called him a liar. They're editing it out of the videos already. As we speak, the PM and his people are texting as many people as they can to try to find the Zabruta film to say exactly what happened when. Nice try, pal. The reality is you were called a liar, you made her cry, and when you had the chance to apologise, you didn't. For what it's worth, this is the ABC footage. It shows the Prime Minister saying, I'm the Prime Minister. It does not show him saying that I'm the one running the country. But Channel 7, Channel 9, Channel 2, SBS, Sky News and Channel 10 have all got the footage of him being called a liar and making the woman cry. This is, in part, what is being sent around for those who are off to defend the Prime Minister. You have a look and you decide whether you think this gets him off the hook. I don't.
I'm happy to know what we were in team to talk with the ministers, hear what they have to say, and then we'll consider the decision of them speaking about 10 minutes. But I'm not having any attacks towards myself or the organisation. Speaking or not speaking?
Again, every now and then, the most practised politicians show us who they really are. If you've been watching this show since day one of this bloke becoming Prime Minister, we have shown you almost once a week an example of it. When it comes to transparency, that really is more secrecy, in the way that his government behaves, in the way that a person who lied to the Senate gets to keep her job because he couldn't possibly admit a mistake. There are so many issues today, we'll get to them all, you know them all, from people that are alleged to be involved in very significant crimes who shouldn't be in the country. But his government, well, they were all about keeping us safe. Reality, of course, they weren't. But there's a couple of extra details here that I really want to jump into, because there's some stuff you haven't heard tonight, and because you're so busy, you probably haven't seen much of this stuff around today. So I associate myself with all of my colleagues and the great words that they've said. And again, there's a fairly solid chance the Prime Minister's throwing something at a television right now because he's not watching us from the normal place that he would normally be hate watching us from. This is what the Prime Minister had to say yesterday.
We're here today to demand that governments of all levels must do better, including my own, including every state and territory government.
Now, while that is rhetorical, that we all must do better, Peter Van Onselen today, the new political editor of the Daily Mail, well, he shot right between the eyes. Here's the priority of the Prime Minister who had gone through the women's marches in 2021, who now that he's in there, is now having his media mates pulling apart the woman who called him a liar and who he made cry. Anthony Albanese has urged Australians to do more to combat the national crisis of men killing women. Yet his 2022 election promise of 500 new domestic violence frontline workers has been a monumental failure. He promises 500, but in March of this year, only 17 of the 500 frontline workers have actually been filled. Does that surprise you? He stands there in front of the women yesterday, and when he wasn't making them cry or he wasn't writing them off as emotional today, he again was saying all governments need to do better, including his own.
Society and Australia must do better. We need to change the culture. We need to change attitudes. We need to change the legal system. We need to change the approach by all governments. It's not just government's problem. It's a problem of our entire society. And this is a national crisis.
Well, as you know, we've been ripping into the Prime Minister for how he truly feels about the situation happening in the Northern Territory. You remember it was January 2023 when he was there for a couple of hours before buggering off to the tennis, where he was the VIP of all VIPs for not one, not two, but 3 days straight. Well, the Prime Minister is in the Northern Territory tonight, but only after he flew into the Northern Territory very late this afternoon. Did he mix with the locals? No. Instead, he went to a construction site that was walled off from the locals, where the union mates would make sure he wouldn't bump in to the baker whose joint's been broken into how many times. He wouldn't talk to the publican whose building was smashed up and they ended up with the curfew. Oh no, here I am to care. Spinning to the media that he's spending the night in Alice Springs. I'll tell you, I'm fairly confident where he is spending the night in Alice Springs tonight. And it's not going to be on the spare bed of his MP. It's not going to be in the encampments that are 5 minutes out of town. Out of respect for the office, I will not mention the hotel. But I'm pretty sure it'll be a hotel, not a member of the public. And then tomorrow morning he'll get up, he'll have another quick little meeting. He'll do it when the problems that exist during the night will have gone to bed. He won't get in the car tonight and take the cameras with him. Instead, he'll be there tomorrow, pretend that he's listening, and then he'll bugger off. But just yesterday, he's talking about domestic violence and the importance of it and the need for us to talk about it. Well, today, he's in the Northern Territory, where the latest numbers that we checked today, the stats from the Northern Territory Police tell us, in the past 12 months, 7,500 people are the victims of domestic violence. The whole population is about 250,000. 1,700 of those were in Alice Springs last year. Now, that's just what's known to police. We all know the number is way higher than all of that. But at his little press conference today, where he's strolling around the sanitised building site, did he say a word about domestic violence and domestic violence in the Northern Territory? Well, guess what, everyone? Nothing. Not a word. Now, you would think, if you're about to call a national cabinet meeting, if you think it's so important that we hear from you at a rally where you make the organisers cry and then write them off as emotional the next day, that you'd have the stones to actually recognise the problem of domestic violence, particularly in the Northern Territory, specifically in Alice Springs. I don't know, but none of that. And by the way, he's going to spend a night in Alice Springs, and this was being fed out to all the chooks in the press gallery who wrote it up. He has spent more time in Indonesia than he will in Alice Springs, because that's his real priority. His real priority is not getting to the coalface, not the representatives of the coalface, the coalface, and talking to the people in his own country about what they need. Instead, here I am strutting around on the world stage. I've even got a nickname for my plane. It's the same as my dog. And this bloke has had this form for a long time, where if he wants to make domestic violence the issue that is this week, when you go to Alice Springs, you talk about it. Challenge, let's see what happens tomorrow. And because he's sitting in that hotel room right now, waiting for Q&A to start in a couple of minutes' time, you know, Prime Minister, that there is only so many times you can pull off the trick before people start to realise it ain't real and magic is just a performance. This bloke thought that Indigenous issues in Australia would be summarily dealt with by an advisory body that Australia rejected, that it supported 60-40 and it rejected 60-40. So he could farm it off. Instead, the responsibility is his useless ministers, the Labor government in the Northern Territory. Yet, the full 24 hours after, we saw his true priority. His true priority was sanitise pictures from a cleaned-up city and then tell the media that he spent a night in Alice Springs. He will be very comfortable tonight. And I say that we have been on this bloke for a while because when he was on the side of the outrage in 2021, this is what he was saying in the Parliament about the need for everyone to clean up their act.
One thing that these tragic circumstances should do is ensure that every member of this House do their best to act in order to make a difference. We're a great country, but the stain of violence against women and children is one that is on all of us. But we are in a position of power. We can use it to make lives better, and we should do just that.
Well, here's your challenge, Prime Minister, just in between room service deliveries. This will eventually get to one of your 11 personal staff that deal with the media, as opposed to previous Prime Ministers who've had 4. Could you please tell us tomorrow what happened to the blokes in the Labor Party who were accused of some pretty horrific behaviour the very same week you were making that statement in the Parliament? Well done to Samantha Maiden, she wrote it at the time. But no follow-up from Albo to tell us what happened. These were the women of the Labor Party writing on a Facebook page about the blokes in the Labor Party who could still be ministers today, or they could be ministers in the past, or they could be current MPs, or they could be former MPs. We were never told. He is a man who punches the wall next to his female staffer's head, calling her an effing C. When she passes on news he doesn't want to hear. What happened to that bloke? He is a married man who plied a young woman with drinks until she had no idea what was happening. He promised others at the gathering he would get her home safely. Before putting her into a cab, he had sex with her when she had no ability to consent. The next day, he texted her to demand that she take the morning after pill and blamed her for what happened, saying she was so drunk that she came on to him, and he threatened tell no one. What's happened to that bloke? Is this from the deep, dark past of the 70s and the 80s? Or did it happen a little closer to now? I don't know. Another one. He is a married man who harasses a female staffer by sending her over 50 text messages a night asking for her to meet him, to have sex with him, and when he hears nothing back, he sends aggressive texts warning her not to tell anyone that he's contacted her. Another one. He is a man who begs, please don't tell my wife. It won't happen again. It does. The next morning, he convinced himself he'd done nothing wrong by saying, I didn't do anything wrong, right? We're all good. You're an attractive woman and the world is always going to treat you like that. What happened to that bloke? Again, nothing. Nothing. We never heard. Former Deputy Leader Jenny Macklin apparently was investigating all of this. No outcome. From the bloke who claims to really care. 24 hours later, he's blaming the organisers. He's sending the message out to all of the media mates. She's full of it. The people who were around her were emotional. You go to the Northern Territory, where you don't even have the courage to just go for a random walk. It's all pre-planned with all the visitors bussed out of town. Last one. He is a man some 40 years my senior, groped and tried to stick his tongue down my throat in a lift at work. Nothing. No follow-up. Because the politics was, let's pretend there was a giant political conspiracy around a former Defence Minister's staffer and what happened. Now, the court has very much adjudicated what happened in that room, but the same court told us that the giant conspiracy that you fed, that you lied about, that your upper house members, now Finance Minister, was puffed up about, didn't happen. Yet you go out there and pretend that we're still fighting yesterday's fight. Well, guess what? You're in charge. And you can hate me as much as you like, and you can roll your eyes about this channel as much as you like too. But Australia saw you for what you are. Australia saw this bloke for who he really is, which is a bloke who is arrogant enough to make an event of highly vulnerable people because of what has happened to them into a look at me moment, and when he gets called out on it, the backgrounding is disgraceful. And you will know who is getting the backgrounding because there'll be the ones on Twitter tonight, oh, but he really said this, or on TV shows in the next couple of days, oh, not quite. He should have said sorry yesterday. I think he will say sorry tomorrow. But while he's at it, could one or two of the reporters who make it to Alice Springs say, Prime Minister, what's your view of the sexual assault situation in the Northern Territory? Why is it so high? What would you say are specific things we can do for this community? No, there'll be none of that. Oh, by the way, did Jenny Macklin ever hand back the report about the 50 Labor staffers who said things about MPs, who could be ministers or could be nobodies in the past? I don't know. They could be staffers long gone or the people at the heart of it. I don't know. But of course, none of that will happen. Instead, we'll just change the subject. We'll talk about Elon Musk. We'll come up with every other bit of BS and rubbish you can. And most of them will go along for the ride. I won't, and I don't care how powerful the Prime Minister is in this country. I don't care. He is being exposed for what he is. Politeness holds me back from adding any other words or stories to the start of tonight's program. Meantime, the two people who should have been bounced a long time ago for not being able to be in charge of our borders, none other than clueless Claire O'Neill and Adam Giles. Sorry, Andrew Giles. I always get them confused sometimes, particularly when I'm fired up. These two, every step of the way, have been wrong in the way that they have handled the preparation and the result of the High Court case that saw all of those people being let out of detention. But one thing they have said on the days they stuff up and the days they think they're fixing the problem is this.
To keep the community safe.
To keep the community safe.
Keep Australians safe.
To improve community safety.
Well, you know by now that one of the people who they let out is being accused of committing a very significant crime. Now, of course, we don't know if this person had an ankle bracelet like he should have had. We do know that when there was an opportunity to deny him bail, the people representing the Commonwealth did not make that application. We do know that this government, according to, again, the public reporting that's around, has not even used their own laws to try to put people back into detention. And instead, as you have seen many times this evening, but you are about to see one more time, a woman in her 70s was brutalised.
I was pouring with blood from my mouth, from my nose, and I blacked out, unconscious for a minute or two. I thought I was dying. I don't know how I survived this.
Now, people are charged, so things become alleged crimes and alleged offenders. But the details that we've all learnt today yet again prove the mockery of government officials saying our first priority is to keep you safe. You've only got to keep an eye on 150 people. If millions of people have the capacity to find their phone, how do we not have the technology to finding 150 people and know where they are and know what they're doing? Or maybe there's part of the machine that doesn't want them to. I'm going to return to a favoured topic of mine, which is petrol prices around the country. I'm assuming by now the Prime Minister is well and truly turned off, but still. His government inherited 23 cents per litre as the taxation. However, they decided to increase it to 49 cents. They say they're all about the cost of living, but they won't cut that tax. And that cut would be beneficial to people when they are paying, and we checked this tonight, $2.13 in Sydney, $2.21 in Melbourne, $2.28 in Brisbane. And you would think that the bloke who had made a point at $1.79 would want to do something when it's $2.13, $2.21 and $2.28, but are you surprised? This is the same bloke who promised that the Labor government would lower the cost of living, yet where's it gone? Almost every day since he became the Prime Minister. Liverpool Council is in Sydney's southwest. It is a big, busy, vibrant community. Now, there's some complications that are happening behind the scenes at the moment, and most recently their general manager, who was a former MP, got the boot. And unions have been protesting, in part, some of the issues that are happening in and around the council. I will not profess to know them all, nor will I bore a national audience with what's happening in a particular local council. But the mayor is a bloke called Ed Manoon, and Ed is Islamic. And for some reason, council workers decided to scream something at him that is completely inappropriate. Have a listen to what they were screaming at the Mayor of Liverpool, who is a Muslim.
Put some pork on your fork.
The smart Alex, when confronted about this, said they were just mentioning an ad. Oh, yeah, I'm sure. Let's see whether the officials in New South Wales or the Prime Minister will admonish these people. Because I thought he was all about going after Islamophobia. Well, if that's being practiced by members of his own union against a mayor in Western Sydney, and we've got the tape, that'll be really clear. But then again, we have the tape of the Prime Minister making the organisers of the rally cry yesterday, who called him a liar. And rather than say sorry, he described them as emotional. Great news out of Queensland. Great news out of Queensland. The idiot Premier there, Stephen Miles, who of course definitely wasn't laughing when asked a question about youth crime, but yes, he was asked a question about youth crime and laughed. New polls say every Labor MP, massive trouble right now. The whole government looks like finally, 4 years too late, but still, looks like it's going to get swept out. Now, the eventual election result probably will be a little more generous than this, but you need to have a look. Have a look at your two-party preferred. Labor hasn't been leading since June of 2022, and now the LNP is rocketing a lot higher in two-party preferred, and Labor's in the pot right now, and that's, on the primary vote. The two-party preferred vote, as you can see there, is about the best part of, 56-44. Giggles said this about polls that say he'll be looking for a job by the end of the year, and I couldn't be happier.
I'm spending my time in the regions. I'm listening to Queenslanders. I'm aiming to deliver for them what they tell me their priorities are. That's what I'll keep doing. And all our opponents have is slick slogans and whinging.
As for the potential future Premier of Queensland, but again, there is one thing the Labor Party machine is very good at in Queensland, and it is throwing up a whole bunch of dust to confuse voters. So we'll see what happens. But David Crucifulli, the LNP leader, said this.
The numbers that drive us are the numbers that Queenslanders are talking about. Rising power prices, rising youth crime, ambulance ramping spiralling out of control, not being able to get into the housing market.
Joe Biden, as unpopular as ever in the United States, here's the trajectory of his presidency. The pink there is his disapproval level, and as you can see, from August of 2022, my apologies, I've never had a squint there, he has gone into deep disapproval territory now, 56%. So they're trying to find a way for him to stand out from the crowd, and he ended up doing an interview with Howard Stern. Now, Howard Stern, of course, the private parts guy, is not the private parts guy anymore. Instead, he's a full suck-up now to the left and he's sort of a COVID nutter and all the rest of it, you see, because he's trying to not get cancelled for things like blackface in his previous career and outrageous stuff and Sibians and all the rest of it, right? Well, he interviewed Joe Biden, and have a listen to what has happened to Howard Stern.
I want to thank you for your compassion. You know, the reason I'm so excited to talk to you was because I wanted to understand the tragedy in your life and how you dealt with it. And you're the kind of leader I love, because we're lucky to have you in the Oval Office and serving as the father of the country. Because if you're a good father to your family, which you are, I know you'd be a good father to the country. And I want to thank you for providing a calming influence.
Yeah, Hunter Biden, amazing. And then there's this sick event. We have a version of it here called the Midwinter Ball, I think, in Canberra. Oh, it's allegedly for charity. But what ends up happening at the White House Correspondents' Dinner is that all the people who are supposed to hold power to account get together with all of the people that run everything in Washington, lobbying firms, the politicians, all the rest of it. It's allegedly a star-studded affair. It's sick. It's really gross, right? It basically, they all laugh at how Biden dotters around, doesn't answer questions, all the rest of it. And then, as always, the president at this event gets the chance to show he's a stand-up comedian, and he's even bad at that.
Sleepy Don. Of course, the 2024 election's in full swing. And yes, age is an issue. I'm a grown man running against a 6-year-old. Age is the only thing we have in common. My vice president actually endorses me.
Check, please. Latest poll, even with Donald Trump in court and everything they've been throwing at him, still winning. Best part of 6 points. A little bit lower when everyone's on the ticket, but still, he's in front. There's a lot to talk about tonight. We will get to it with a great panel, a great debate. Sam Crosby's here with Matt Canavan. We're talking about everything from how to cut the federal budget through to Albo's very, very bad and very revealing weekend. More in a sec here on Paul Murray Live. Thanks for watching us. Thank you so much for watching. Now, as I was making my points at the start of the show, the Prime Minister, either himself or his 11 personal media staff, have put out the images of what was happening in Alice Springs today. I think I can remember somewhere in the past half hour saying, did he meet with the baker? He did actually meet with the baker. There's a photo of it on his Twitter. What was actually said, we'll find out from the baker tomorrow. Let's get into the conversation right now. Senator Matt Canavan, of course, from Queensland, joining us now from beautiful Rocky. The lovely Sam Crosby, sitting here in the man cave.
Hello, mate.
Hoping not to talk about, well, most of what I did for the first half hour. Well, I'm going to let you off because there's other things to get to, including today at the Truth and Reconciliation stuff that's playing out in Victoria. It's all part of the process that leads towards treaty. The Premier of Victoria was there to essentially be in a conversation, but also look like you're in a witness box. It was a strange configuration of things, but she was being hit very directly about what kids are going to learn about when it comes to history. And it's pretty obvious that this Premier is going to fold to the history of anything other than Invasion Day.
Like many Victorians, my formal education of Aboriginal people's histories and experiences was limited. It was part of a deliberate and systematic attempt to erase First Nations people from our state's history. The record this Commission will hand down will mean at long last the truth of our state's history is told. The murder, the massacres, the dispossession of culture and country. The land taken away, the way of life destroyed.
Now, Matt, all that history ever owes is the truth, right? And there is a full truth that people need to understand, and they do need to understand the atrocities that have taken place. But they also need to understand the beginnings of the modernity in which they will live this year and many decades into the future. If we're having this conversation where basically there's a public struggle session with the existing head of government in Victoria to basically offer up that only one version of history and only one set of truths will be put forward, does that concern you at all?
Well, look, I think there is one set of truths. There's a true history, if you like, but I just don't know. I don't know how old the Premier is. I'm not sure. But I only graduated, or was now 26 odd years ago, from school, and we learnt about the atrocities. We learnt about the terrible things that were done by some people to some Indigenous people. It was a pretty much a common feature of all of our lessons year after year in school in the 1990s. So, I mean, and I know from my kids now that's pretty much all they learn about seemingly in history today. I think our history is much richer, and it's a shame that many students like myself actually read more after we graduated, and you learn a little bit more about how, well, there were many English settlers who were quite sympathetic to Aboriginal people. Arthur Phillip himself famously was speared, but still maintained cordial relations with the local Indigenous people in Sydney. And of course, what about the thousands of people that were brought to Australia against their will? The convicts. Don't they deserve... I often now in these discussions think it's very strange all these convicts gets almost treated like they were here to rob people of their land. They were forcibly brought here. And so there was a lot of despair in this veil of tears that is our world in Australia. And we have a rich history, and it should all be told. All the truth should be told, including, of course, what a great nation we have built all together, and what a great future we should have if we stay together.
Sam, I have always believed, and I surprise some people with this, I even annoy some people with this sometimes, I don't have a problem if, in the same way as there is in Washington, say like with the Smithsonian Institute that's about African American studies, that there's a place where you can see artefacts and hear lectures and inform yourself, either as a member of the public or presumably, like everyone else does, on a school excursion like they do to the War Memorial or Parliament House. We should have had that in Australia. I certainly know previous Prime Minister Morrison tried to get somewhere near that. However, certain clans and families and all that, Canberra is a difficult place to decide what goes where. So I'm all fine for us learning, but in the same way that what happened in world wars or the Depression or in, Roo Park versions of what happened in the back alleys of Sydney, right? All of that informs me, but it doesn't make you feel guilty. So is there any balance between knowing about a horrible past and being able to move on from it?
Of course there is. Of course there's a balance. And, it's going to make for terrible TV, but I'm going to agree with most of or just about everything that Matt said.
Excellent.
You can have both. It's a bit like the Taco kid. Why can't we have both? You can explain to people...
An old El Paso run, I love it.
You can explain to people the horrible dispossession that took place, the convicts. You can explain, the early civilization. And, where are we going to teach these kids? I don't know if what Matt was taught. I was certainly taught more about Henry VIII's wives than I was about, early Australian history. So I would say a little bit less on but a little bit less on Henry VIII's wives.
It's a Catholic social justice teaching,
Ruth Park, not Roo Park, I apologise, by the way, to those that were yelling at the telly, probably still the Prime Minister or his people. Anyway, interesting poll in the Financial Review. It says that Australians would like to see something pulled back out of the federal budget to make sure that that government spending gets pulled back in order to make sure that inflation is not going to continue to go up and therefore interest rate rises. So, simple question: what would you cut from the federal budget, Sam?
I'll tell you what I'd cut, and I'll tell you what you shouldn't cut, and what the easy answer is to cut. Mm-hmm. What I would cut quite happily is this plague of consultants that has afflicted Labor Party, Liberal Party governments for the last 30 years, that it is the easiest thing in the world. Instead of saying, hey, we're going to go invest $100 million and build up the public service with some of the best and brightest minds. No. We're going to 500 or 600 or 700 times that number, but do it incrementally. And we're going to throw out contracts to McKinsey's, to KPMG, to whoever else. That is where I'd start. And I get every government, when they're in opposition, will say, we're going to cut consultants. Then they get in, they're like, the political realities of this are actually really difficult. Maybe we're just going to make a bit of a show about it. So I'd say cut the consultants. And where I would say absolutely do not touch is the easy line, which is the people who can afford it least. Going after the people on the lowest rung, the pensioners, people like that. do not fall for Treasury's analysis, and they will sit there and time again and say, stop the indexing. Don't give any CPI increases.
Yeah.
That's the obvious thing. I've heard them say it 100 times. Do not fall for that mistake.
Yeah, Matt, I'm pretty sure green subsidies might be in there, and it might be a little more than the consultancies, but what would you yank out of it?
Yeah. Well, Sam's not wrong about the consultancies, but why stop there? I mean, if the consultants are such a waste of money, what about all the bureaucrats along with them? I mean, they're basically doing the same job. It's one just in the private sphere, the others in the public sphere. We have education and health departments full of thousands of bureaucrats, yet we don't run a single school or hospital in the Commonwealth Government. Now, just to be very clear to my friends of the Labor Party, I don't think we should cut spending on education or spending on hospitals that go directly to those things, but the vast bureaucracies we've built in Canberra, as I say, to oversee nothing, is a complete waste of money, and that should be cut back clearly. Yes, you're right. A lot of the assistance we're providing right now through this ridiculous Made in Australia program, that can go. That's not going to do anything for our country. But I'd also add on top of that, notwithstanding what Sam said, he's right about disadvantaged people, but last year the Albanese government increased the single parenting payment by $2 billion in one budget, and it's just not something we can afford. Like, I all want to help out people on low incomes, but at the time when inflation was running hot, it was the wrong time to fuel more welfare spending like this government did last year. It was a massive increase in welfare spending last year. And that has clearly helped fuel inflation again over last year, which is still not coming down. And look, finally, the NDIS, it's the big gorilla. It's costing $40 billion at the moment. It's expected to grow to $55 billion over the next 4 years. Even if you just sort of cap that, there needs to be some caps put in place here. It's costing 3 times what it expected. You'd save tens of billions of dollars if you put a cap on the NDIS right now.
A little hint at what we're about to talk about on the other side here. Power, passion, Trump. We'll get there with some predictions as well for the week ahead. We continue in our conversation. About 14 minutes away from the late debate. Remember, you can always send me an email, paul@skynews.com.au. And thank you to everyone in Renmark. I had a magical time. Literally from the second we got there to the moment we left. It was spectacular. And thanks again to everyone who turned up. Thank you very much for watching. We're here with Sam Crosby in the Man Cave and in his own Man Cave right now. And am I hearing some rain on the tin roof there in Queensland as well? It's nice to hear. Otherwise, somebody's having a very loud shower.
Very perceptive, Paul. Close the window now, though. So
no, I love it. I love the sound. I love it. It's a beautiful sound, the rain in Queensland. So today, interesting things here where there's, pretty obvious that for the energy system to hold up, we're probably going to have to try to hold on to coal as part of it for as long as possible. And isn't it interesting they're starting to notice that the blowing up of everything to make them feel good before you've built the stuff to replace it is like trying to win Bathurst with 3 wheels.
Good analogy. It's totally absurd. It's a cash merry-go-round now, energy system. The only problem is, of course, unlike the merry-go-round at the local fair, this ride's not free. You've got to pay for it, and you're paying for it in your power bills every quarter. Because, of course, as we just described earlier before the break, a lot of your power bills are going to these green energy subsidies to pay for the various obsessions we have with some types of power production in terms of wind and solar. That's going there. Then that weakens the grid and undermines the profitability of coal-fired power stations, which are meant to run all the time. We need to keep them around for when the wind and solar's not there, so they have to get paid extra now, and that will also be put onto your bill. Now, this is one of the reasons why your bill continues to go up, even though you might read in the paper from time to time that power prices are going down, because over the last year, the wholesale price of power has fallen as gas prices have stabilised and the market's shaken out a little bit. But all these extra payments are now added onto that price that prop up the coal-fired power stations, that pay people to provide emergency power when we're short quite often now, especially in summer in the depths of winter. And so everybody ends up paying more. And it's at the end of it all, you wonder, why, Paul? Why? We still have the coal-fired power stations running. We only get a little bit of power from renewable energy. We're not changing the temperature of the globe. You're just paying more for it, and a whole lot of spivs in the renewable energy sector are making a lot of money on the back of it. We just got to shut this whole thing down and go back to where we were.
Now, Sam, your choices are that you can continue to debate the bloke who knows everything about it, or we can move on to Donald Trump, which I'm going to make the choice for you. So, latest opinion poll turns around and says that Trump's up by 6. Now, this is a poll that's taken place after the court started. Been there for a couple of weeks now. Again, national polls don't mean too much because you've really got to get down into the 7 states that matter, and you've got to have 3 candidates, including RFK, or maybe even a couple of others, to see if a point comes off here and a point comes off there. Howard Stern is where Biden went this weekend as a way to try to get around the gatekeepers. I always think that stuff's smart, but Stern's not what Stern used to be. I think abortion will end up sort of supercharging some moves here. But if Trump's been in court, and Trump's the lead story every day, and it hasn't been a story of cuddles, it's instead, all the accounting and the rest of it, how's he still up by 6?
You're talking about a turnout question. So Australia's quite easy to poll, right? In Australia, we're looking at, the Electoral College, who's turning out to vote. Over there, it's all about who's going to stay home, who's going to be animated to go. And Trump's people, they don't care if they're seeing him on the news at a rally in front of 5,000 people or in a witness box. They think he's completely innocent. He's their guy. It's just reinforcing the narrative, and he's out there talking more and more and more. Look, I think obviously he's got every chance in the world to win on his own right. The Kennedy factor makes it really scary for the Democrats. All they need is for him in a couple of different states, and I saw that I think it was last week he got on the ballot in Michigan. All he needs is in a couple of those states like Michigan to get 3-4% of the vote, which is eminently doable.
Absolutely.
And that's going to come 80% from the Democratic ticket. That's a real worry.
Yeah, well, it's hence why it's really interesting. Trump's been wailing on RFK. They'll no doubt be the same when it comes to the Democrats. But as always, I try to show you the data rather than just, sure, the doddering man's funny to watch, but let's not fall into that trap because, of course, that's where Hillary was in 2016. Democrats were, of course, even with George W. Bush for the best part of 8 years. All right, a bold prediction. Matt Canavan, what is definitely happening this week?
Well, I'll tell you what's happening next week, Paul. I wasn't expecting this, but Beef Week is on next week here in Rockhampton. So that's happening in the next week. In a week's time, Beef Week will be on. And what a great week it is. Just get to eat as much beef as you can. It's beautiful here in Central Queensland. Beautiful time of year. So
now I've heard Albo wants to go there.
Get along to Beef
Is he
Week
going to get, the beef to cry in the way that he did this weekend with far more important issues? We'll all see and we'll all learn together. All right, Sam.
I'm sure he'll get a chance to speak, but we want him to fix our beef roads. That's what he needs to do.
All right, see, you're going in with the nice. I like it. All right, Sam.
I don't know what will happen. I know what I would like to happen, which is National Cabinet's going to meet this week, and I sincerely hope that they come to the table with a DV package that is worth something.
Yep.
I know you had the stats earlier about, only a few of those 500 DV workers have been filled. I think the 500 in and of itself is tragically small. It needs to be filled, but it needs to be a much bigger number.
100%.
And the DV services themselves need to be built. There are organisations, I work for one, that is prepared to do it, but we need some help to build them. And I sincerely hope the National Cabinet's the place to do that.
All right, we will find out all together. Thank you very much. Do appreciate it. Thank you, lads. Talk to you again very soon. All right, quick break, back with more. Looking forward to the late debate about 5 minutes from now. And remember, Nigel Farage on this show tomorrow night. Albo's Twitter feed right on 9 o'clock. Accident, of course. This was posted. This is the video of him in Alice Springs meeting with all of this, that and the others. Yes, the baker was there. I suggested otherwise, but that was the case. Did have a chat with the mayor. But let's see if tomorrow he's got the courage to say sorry to the lady he made cry on Sunday and then tried to brush away in breakfast TV appearances today as emotional.